All right, everybody, let's try this again. I was halfway through the recording and the mouse stopped working. So, this is take 2, March 20th through March 26th. This is for the Rave reading for our CIRF report. CIRF stands for Collective Influence Report and Forecast. And we're going to be on number 444. Report 444 will be coming out on the 19th of March. This Rave reading is for that report. Okay, and it's gate 10, line 5, the Heretic. Just a little bit about human design. For some reason, it's the most, I don't know, it's always the most poignant of all the different sources about context of the energies that we need to be considering for that week. It's amazing how this thing works, and I'll show you how we plot it. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the energies. That's what the CIRF report is for. But ultimately, the epitome of the overall energy is going to be the last quarter moon. So we plot that at the time of the last quarter moon, and it plots into human design gate 10. And the goal of this gate is empowering oneself through actions and behaviors. It encourages authentic self-expression and the confidence to be oneself. And here we go again. As you're going to see, there's a lot of other energies astrologically that are it's just the epitome of what we're going to talk about. So all roads lead to gate 10 in the human design. So gate 10 says treading the underlying code of behavior, which ensures successful interaction despite circumstances. So these pictures represent kind of higher principles. And this kind of opportunist is looking for higher, right? Higher and better. That's kind of the overall picture of what we're going to talk about. But it's line 5. The moon, the last quarter moon, will be in line 5 at the time of the last quarter moon. And it's called the Heretic, direct and overt challenge to norms. Yes, it kind of has a Uranus sort of a flair to it, but it's not an aloof thing. And you'll see very quickly why Uranus is not one of these increment decrements. On the increment, it says it's ruled by Jupiter, and it says the ability to succeed through understanding and expression of higher principles, principled behavior which directly challenges tradition. It does kind of sound like Uranus, but Uranus is more of just changing for the sake of changing. This is changing in order to improve from the way we've always done it through higher principles. That's why it's Jupiter. And on the decrement side, and we'll get really into how to use these things and what they really mean, but just reading the overview, Mars on the decrement, the burning at the stake behavior, which directly challenges behavior and is eventually punished. So this Mars aspect is judging the tradition and judging the status quo and why are you guys doing it that way and starting fights. And so you make enemies with too much Mars and you get burned at the stake potentially. But the Heretic, just the context of that word is you're going to be looked at really strange because you're bringing in really unique ideas. So on the increment is Jupiter. And I'll expand this picture so you can kind of follow along. And here is Jupiter is teaching, provides positive projection. It starts with higher thinking, which Jupiter provides. It's the philosopher. It's the higher level mind, not the kind of rational and logic. That's Mercury. But this is the higher realms of mind. And that's why we have Jupiter ruling it. This understanding of these higher principles that Jupiter provides tends to emanate outward, which is also kind of a Jupiter thing. Promises of hopeful change. Hey, everybody, this is a better way to do it. The Jupiter influence also spreads out, like it's a planet of excess, so its influence is expanding outward. Hey, everyone can benefit. That's the Jupiter says to a larger and larger audience as it gains momentum. Enhancement is introduced out of generosity, not for just the sake of bucking the system. It's not that. It's promises of doing things better. So the themes in the Jupiter side, the increment side, conceiving and introducing higher wisdom and higher principles. This sort of shows a teaching. That's what this increment does, mentoring improvements, encouraging new levels. There's also a sort of a gambling side of Jupiter. It's not fully knowing what would be on the other side or the higher side and trying it anyway. It's like a gambling for new possibilities. But I wouldn't say it's the main theme. Now let's talk about extreme Jupiter. So if we get too much Jupiter as we're carrying out this line of improvement, we get potentially too high of principles. So imagine a pro athlete on social media, it's going viral, and they're trying to convince all of us, normal people to train every day the way they train. Well, it's like it's ridiculous. It's too high of expectations for time and money and energy. It's like ridiculous. So that's just a silly example of too much Jupiter. We can also have losing would-be followers because of the exaggerated difference between this is the way we're always doing it and this is the way we could be doing it. It's way too lofty to where these people can't even conceive of what you're even talking about because it's so out there, quote unquote, out there. Also, it might exaggerate the effectiveness for too many people. When this one thing, this widget or this process works for one person, i.e. me, I shouldn't assume that it will work for everyone. I mean, sometimes it does, but normally it won't help every single person. So Jupiter might exaggerate its effectiveness. And excessive Jupiter takes too much hope and takes it way too far. Oh, that was weird. All right, so Mars is on the decrement side, and Mars is used to assert Jupiter's new principles. Introducing new ideas and concepts would need at least some Mars energy to initiate that change. He helps to fight homeostasis. Homeostasis is the force that opposes positive change or any change. Mars naturally arises against skepticism or judgment and might feel like defensiveness. You might get defensive if people aren't really agreeing to your new ideas. But sufficient Mars is needed to not cave in to those confused faces. It feels like judgment. So you need a little Mars to stand up for yourself, to justify, to defend, and convince the audience that you're right or this is a good thing to explore. Let's move this out of the way. Themes of Mars: taking initiative to buck the status quo and introduce your ideas, willingness to change, willingness to behave in the same new manner despite it being different than what everyone else is doing. That can take courage. So, imagine you don't have any Mars at all in this changing behavior thing. Well, Jupiter, if all you have is Jupiter and no Mars, then you'll be likely still trying to convince everybody and not actually doing anything different, but just hypothetically talking about it. But also, most importantly, waiting for someone else to start doing it. The Mars aspect encourages us to have enough confidence to actually start doing what we're talking about. And then that encourages everyone else even more. It's more influential to do what you're saying instead of just talking about it. But if we get too much Mars, you can already imagine, because we're talked about burned at the stake. Well, too much Mars is your heels are dug in. You're defending your ideas too militantly. You're making threats. Extreme Mars makes the change seem so threatening to others that at risk being burned at the stake. And we can be burned at the stake in terms of reputation, or maybe you're exiled from this group or tribe or family or whatever. That doesn't feel good. Maybe you go into attack mode and start hurting people's feelings if they don't agree, or guilt tripping them. That's kind of a too much Mars. Here's another aspect to too much Mars. Become more militant about compliance. So it's no longer about like higher principles anymore. It's more like just do what I say because I said it. Like nobody likes to hear that, especially as parenting and kids. But example is just follow the science. Started to be more of, this was a kind of a quote as we moved through the beginning of the 2020s era. And it started to be more about compliance than it was about these alleged higher principles. That was too much Mars. Trust me, just do it anyway. And this line is not about compliance. It's not about getting people. It's not about salesmanship. It's not about getting people to change their behavior. It's getting the system into this new realm of processing and behavior, higher principles. So we're going to bring Jupiter down. So how do we balance this out? All right, we need a little Jupiter, we need a little Mars. Let's start with Jupiter. That's where it begins. It starts with the expansive, optimistic, philosophical ideas and spread the heretic's message of hopeful improvements. It's about hopeful philosophy, higher principles, but it also brings skill sets of teaching, mentoring, influencing large groups, potentially, with these new ideas. And he might not be directly influencing those larger audiences. It might be, quote unquote, going viral. Just the idea. The idea has a kind of takes its own life, begins to have its own life as it gets interpreted by other people and as the message spreads out. But it must be tempered. Jupiter must be tempered to avoid being too lofty and seen as just crazy or impossible. If people aren't changing or following, it might be time to turn up a little bit of Mars. It also might be not enough Jupiter, not enough explanation, not enough why. What's the point of doing this, and why is it better? But sometimes we need a little bit of Mars to get this change started. So Mars on the decrement, push Jupiter out of the way, bring some more Mars in. This provides the courage and initiative to take action and carry out these ideas, even though they go against the status quo. Imagine doing this. You're going to face judgment, opposition. There's always going to be somebody in the group that goes, I object. But he helps to keep you engaged in hopeful change, not to get bent out of shape. But if you start to overuse Mars, it can lead to unnecessary conflict, power struggles, maybe a damage to your reputation, including and potentially burned at the stake. And those are in quotes, because we don't do that anymore, do we? Hopefully. In this case, start to back off the Mars defensiveness and turn the Jupiter back up. The Jupiter is reminding them why we're doing this again, how it's going to be so much better, how much time we're going to save, how much efficient this is, how much money we'll save, and why this is better. So an example, I was trying to think of an example, and there are many options, but I was almost thinking that, isn't everybody a heretic right now? Because the status quo is, there's this, we're done with it. Left and right doesn't really matter. Everybody, at least in the United States, is ready for big change, like higher principles. And you name it, you name the principles. Everybody is wanting anything except for the way it is right now. And so everyone becomes like the expert. Everyone has ideas. And I almost think that social media is adding into this because its algorithm tends to get you more of other people who have the same kind of ideas or ideas that you like. So it makes you feel like you're way overconfident, that you're in alignment with everybody, and gives you like if you take the Mars from that, in the back of your mind, you're assuming that everyone else has the same opinions. And so now you go start yelling it to everybody and demanding and fighting, i.e., too much Mars here, and where you lose everybody and you don't realize you're even losing them. And you see that too. You see the people who maybe aren't getting their way, and that would be probably pretty much everybody in one way or the other. And you can see how some people are using too much Mars. Now, ironically, you do need some Mars to get the point across, start to enact your higher principles in your own life, so that those new behaviors, as people watch you doing it, will be influenced by that instead of just hearing your words. That's important too, to communicate those higher principles. So that's what I have for this week for report number 444 on the CIRF. To get to the CIRFs, you need to go to the National Dream Center in the YouTube app and subscribe. You'll get a weekly energy report, and we will refer back to this one when we get into the solutions. Okay? I appreciate everybody. Thank you for your comments and likes and shares. Have a great day. We'll see you on Wednesday.